Good evening. Welcome to another edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show right here on YouTube. My name is Leon Jones, and I'm going to get right into the topic tonight because it is very important because we really have a couple of wars going on, but they're wars that are basically one war, good versus evil, and we have a cultural war. Now, in this cultural war, it comes down to society and, of course, politics. Now, we have the midterms coming up in 2026. Now, I'm just going to say this. When you look at the Democratic Party is not about policies, it's all about hating Trump. It's just like Biden when he won in 2020. Now, of course, you had the media that was constantly beating Trump down, saying how bad he is. Well, it's no different. I mean, you have the Epstein files, you have all of this information coming out from the mainstream media when they could have put the Epstein files out back when Biden was president. You have the lies about the economy and housing. Of course, things are a little light, but when things are a little heavy right now. But it's funny when Joe Biden was in office, or if the Democrat were in office like Kamala, none of this would be heard. Now, you know, there's a lot of bias going on. We all talk from bias. I even talk from bias. I talk from the moderate to the right side. But for the most part, I make sure I am clear because I will tell you this, the Republicans aren't doing much to help either. I mean, Trump is really getting everything done through executive orders. I mean, the Republicans are part of it too because they have all of this clique. And see, when you have this clique within one cabal like Washington, they have no idea what's going on outside of Washington. Everybody believes that Washington, California, these are the hubs for a lot of your elitists. These are the ones who talk about the problems that we have in this country, but for the most part, they don't care about the problems. Why? Because our problems aren't their problems. And with the government is basically taking problems that they have actually founded and funded, and they're trying to solve their own problems. Now, for the most part, the entity called the media is being used by the Democratic Party, which filters into education, jobs, religion, and of course, again, the media. So you have media, government rather. You have government, jobs, media, religion, and education. Five power conferences of society, which equals culture. Now, in this culture, you have a lot of Americans who are very stupid people. I'm just going to be honest with you. Many Americans, you are seeing their dysfunction. Now, I'm watching this series called All American. And I'm going to tell you about the culture. You have, his name is Spencer, true story. Well, he's from the hood, and you have another guy who was from Beverly Hills. Well, looking at both parties, the kid from Beverly Hills, the kid from Crenshaw, well, one comes from so called privilege, and the other one comes from the hood. But there's one thing that identifies them both. Both of them had daddy issues. You see, when it comes to the party is really about the same. These are all Washingtonians. They've been in Washington for a long time, and they may argue. Behind the scenes, these are buddies. I'm going to tell you why. See, the media is not going to put this out, so I'm going to put it out. You see, neither the Democrats nor the Republicans want Trump to succeed. Now, of course, the media is not going to put that out because the media has a lot of people who are being paid, and even social media. There are a lot of paid influencers. And the media's job is to keep the American people stupid through the voices of the politicians. They don't want the Americans to be able to read into what the real agenda is. And the real agenda is to keep all of us who are working class people into the proletarian class. Now, let me get into some PowerPoint and some definitions for you. Now, when we deal with the court of public opinion, we're basically taking somebody before any type of trial is set, we're already accusing the person of being guilty. And if that person comes out through the judicial system as being innocent, they're still going to get castigated. I'll give you an example. Crystal Mango, the black woman back in 2006 who accused the 3 or 4 Duke lacrosse boys for essaying her. Well, came out later on that they didn't do it. Now, the court of public opinion still believes that they did it. All of the professors and all of the feminists came down on these boys. But when they found out these boys didn't do it, no apology at all. You don't even hear anybody talking about the Andrea Yates case when she drowned her 5 children. Had it been a man, and if he drowned his children, everybody would have come out and they would have thrown him under the jail. So you see, with the court of public opinion, it basically sides for what they call the underdog, because they believe that the powerhouse, which is the male, is the worst thing that could happen to this country. But when we deal with the court of opinion, it is shaped heavily by the mainstream and social media, and it allows society, not the courts, society to judge individuals, especially in politics, before any kind of formal trial. It influences support for cases, pressures officials, and can cause lasting reputational damage regardless of any legal outcomes. Now, the key aspects to the court of opinion is, number one, you need to understand what the definition of the court of opinion is. It just refers to a collective perception, again, perception, sentiment, and judgment of the general public regarding an individual or event, often operating outside formal legal procedures. So if you look at the media and what's happening, well, the media, and then you have a lot of unelected bureaucrats. They're driving this train, just like the mainstream media and the impact of mainstream media. Mainstream media includes TV and newspapers and social media like Twitter and TikTok and OnlyFans. What they do, they even accelerate the process by allowing narratives to spread rapidly before evidence is fully investigated. So that means they've already proven someone guilty before anything takes place. And the consequences, well, even if an individual goes through a trial and is right, they're going to face what we call a trial by media, where they are deemed guilty in the public eye. This can result in shame, career damage, and pressure on regulators or prosecutors. Going back to the Duke lacrosse players. After Crystal Mangum, and incidentally, she stabbed her boyfriend, and I believe she's in jail, and this was way back in 2011. You don't hear anything about that. But when you have the court of opinion, not only is it driven by bias, it's also driven by feelings. And it's going on right now with this president. And that's what the midterms are going to be about. It's going to be about no policies, because the Democrats really have no policies. The Democrats fucked up all of the economy, and they know they did, so they're trying to blame it on Trump. No, everything happened under the Democrats. So because the Democrats want to take back power in the House, and it really doesn't matter about the midterms because the Republicans are ballists or eunuchs anyway. They want it to happen. That's the problem. And the court of opinion is driven by delusion, emotion. And that, in fact, they all got the lead. The lead is the lies, the emotion, the assumption. She called it leap as well, perception. Then you have the delusion, the deception. That's what's happening. But when you deal with the consequences, again, the trial by media, where they are deemed guilty in the public eye, that can result in shame, career damage, and pressure on regulators or prosecutors. Then you have political framing. In other words, when we deal with the politics, the media often frames stories using partisan language, which influences how the public perceives events. And then you have interactions with legal systems. This is where you even have people who are involved with law, and you have all these panels who act as a jury on mainstream media. And you have to understand juries as well, because juries are sometimes cloistered to avoid this influence. However, the court of public opinion can sometimes affect case outcomes by creating immense pressure, leading to settlements. Now, again, the role of the mainstream media in politics, let's be honest, the media outlets shape public opinion by deciding which stories to cover and how to frame them. And when I say which stories, you have a lot of clips or sound bites that are being played. However, they don't play the whole sound bite. And the media decides to do that all by design because they don't really want you to know what happens. They want to give you what they perceive is happening. So they put that in an individual's head who really isn't smart enough to actually do any research for themselves. And they basically take an issue and frame it, putting doubt in somebody's head, even if they're wrong. And there's a lot of polarization in societies. Citizens often show stronger loyalty to political leaders than to institutions like the courts, making public opinion highly partisan. Well, that's what the media does too. Then you have research. Part of that research comes from the polling data. And it indicates that media coverage of the United States Supreme Court has become increasingly focused on politics rather than law since 2016. Now, why did I say 2016? Because that's when Trump became president. And then you have a lot of the public misinformation. And if you look at my background, what do you have? It's a background of the mainstream media. Now, while mainstream media aims to inform with it, which it doesn't, the mainstream media does not promote news anymore. You might get it on your local mainstream media or your local media, but the mainstream media is nothing but a bunch of talking heads giving an opinion, even when they don't research, and they're paid. You also have paid operatives who run around doing these protests to make sure that they have an influence on what the outcomes of a court case, what the outcomes of an election are going to be. So, again, while mainstream media aims to inform, it's often criticized for bias and failing to fact check, allowing misinformation to fuel the public's judgment. Now, the fact checking comes from the left, trying to utilize it on the right, but when the right goes and fact checks, well, they either scrub it or lie about it. That's what the left does. So, you have to look at it this way: public opinion versus judicial independence. Well, while the Supreme Court is designed to be insulated from public opinion to protect minority rights and maintain an independent judiciary, public perception of its legitimacy can still be influenced by how cases are framed in the news. So basically, public opinion generally holds less sway over the court itself what can influence the political climate surrounding appointments and decisions. And again, if you look at what's going on out here with the mainstream media, everything is projection or projection or conjecture. Everything is fake out here. This is why you hear Trump talk about fake news, because it is fake. If you look on media, and that includes Yahoo, that includes Newsweek, Politico, all of them are telling you how Trump is bad. And these are individuals who have already opined and they're writing stories to try to deceive the public. Now, again, a lot of the public, particularly the ones on the left, they're stupid, not as far as not being able to think, but their thinking is cut off due to emotion because they have so much Trump derangement syndrome and so much hatred toward the right that if the right or Trump does anything to protect them, what are they going to do? They're not going to believe it. When we talk about the immigrants, the ones who are illegal, the criminals, and this is what you have to understand. They're talking about Trump deporting illegals, but Obama deported more illegals than Trump did. Obama was the one who had the kids in cages. They don't tell you that. Look at President Clinton. We'll talk about the Epstein files. Well, the Epstein files, there are a number of Democrats, including Hakeem Jeffries, involved. But you don't hear the mainstream media talk about it. You don't hear the mainstream media talk about the tariffs. So you hear the mainstream media talk about housing prices, but you don't hear the mainstream media going in and saying, well, interest rates are going to be cut. You never hear that. Why? Because the mainstream media is really for the Democrats, and they are the biggest influencers to public opinion. And then you hear a number of individuals who get on TikTok, these lowly, loathing people who don't have anything going on in their lives, they're regurgitating it. And that's what they do in communist countries. They will constantly lie, lie, lie until that lie becomes the truth. Why? Because they've heard it so much. And the bottom line, when it comes to media, many of us really, we don't know how to analyze anything. And when it comes to media, again, there's so much of it out there. So what can you do? When there's media bias on the right too, don't get me wrong. You talk radio. Here's the thing, and I'm going to tell you, we all speak from a bias. I even speak from a bias. Now I'm a little bit more clear. There's really no such thing as 100% balance. That's not true because let's say the House and Senate, everything is 50-50 in numbers. But I guarantee this, that when it comes to vote for an issue, it's not going to be 50-50. This is why you hear the women, when they go out and vote for issues, women vote for bullshit issues anyway, abortion. Women aren't going to vote for the economy. They don't care about the economy. They care about abortion. That's all they care about. They care about getting rid of the patriarchy, which as a black man, I've never even seen a patriarchy. Doesn't exist in the black community. It's de facto matriarchy because even all the men, they're for the women. So it's a de facto matriarchy. The women run the black community. Well, the black community is fucked up because it really isn't running, but they know black women are in there buying all the hair, buying all the African products, buying all the food from foreigners who bring their products to the hood, sell it to the blacks. and even the black pastors bring all of their churches to the hood, make money off the hood, and they're out of there. You have Color Purple, Oprah. That's just like the court of public opinion. Tyler Perry. You have those shows that depict men as abusers, particularly black men. And when black women see that movie, particularly Waiting to Exhale, they actually believe that their man is going to do the same thing that they see on TV. That's court of public opinion. Because court of public opinion does not allow you to think for yourself. They allow you to go along to get along. They allow you to be sheeple. So when one sheep goes in a slaughterhouse, there's another one right behind it. Now, the bottom line is you might have the 60th sheep back there, but because they see the first 59 go into the slaughterhouse, they're not questioning why didn't the 59 sheep come out of the slaughterhouse. They're going to follow. So the court of public opinion basically they allow following. They actually condone following. Because the court of public opinion knows you're stupid. Now let me get back into my PowerPoint again. So as we deal with the mass media and the political agenda. Introduction, mass media, well, your television, radio, newspaper, magazines, the internet, and other means of popular communication. High-tech politics, it's a politics in which the behavior of citizens and policymakers and the political agenda itself are increasingly shaped by technology like AI. Not a mass media today. Well, effective communication through media is the key to political success. Media events purposely staged for the media that nonetheless look spontaneous. Media events can be staged by almost anybody. 60% of the presidential campaign spending is TV ads, and what 2/3 is negative. So imagine making news and imagine laws being put together in one cake when it comes to a case. But all that being put into one case, the court of public opinion, even when they don't have any facts, because they don't like the other side or they believe the other side is bad, even though the court of public opinion is wrong, they're going to be right even when they're lying. And if you're against the court of public opinion, like Nicki Minaj is, and they want to deport Nicki Minaj, why do they want to deport Nicki Minaj? Because she got up here and said that she's for men being men. That's why they don't like her. In other words, she had a bunch of people who were on the left, like she was, and even Cardi B turned against her. Now, originally, Nicki Minaj is from Trinidad. But it's funny how the court of public opinion, particularly how the left works. If you are on the side of the left, you're always going to be on a plantation. You're going to be a sheep. But the minute you start thinking for yourself, they hate you. And the same thing goes for Donald Trump. Donald Trump was a Democrat. And Donald Trump, in my humble opinion, believe it or not, is still a Democrat. Now, what Donald Trump has done, and the Democrats don't even see it, because when we talk about conservatism, J.D. Vance is more conservative than Donald Trump is. For the most part, many people don't really understand what conservatism is. Generally, when somebody's conservative, they have traditional values, traditional values on family, traditional values on spending, traditional values on meritocracy, hierarchy, traditional values that go against what the left has when it comes to their views on abortion and the alphabet community. And what the Democrats do through the court of public opinion, when they start losing, what do they throw in there? They start throwing race and sexism in there. Jasmine Crockett, everything comes down to racism. Oh, I got a PhD. I'm doing A, B, C, and D till you get caught. And see, when the left gets caught, the media doesn't even pounce on it. In fact, the court of public opinion is very silent. And this is where you get the image making and news management. And this is why it's very important, particularly for presidents, because the media is making Donald Trump out to be the bad guy, a king. And you have individuals out there who've been lied to by saying he won't let them protest. Well, how can you protest and then you say Trump is not allowing you to protest? And see, after a while, the mainstream media makes no sense. This is what I'm talking about when I say the court of public opinion. And the court of public opinion is not just in the media, it's in churches, it's on your jobs, it's in schools, it's even in social media, and it's in government, the 5-hour conferences of society. And you also see it on television. You also see it in the movies where you have the chick kicking the man's ass, running off at the mouth, creating the delusion that a man is going to whoop a man is going to get his ass whooped by, well, particularly a 6'5" man is going to get his ass whooped by a 130-pound, 5'2" chick. The media creates that. So the media actually gives women false power. But that media has an influence to the politicians. And that's what the image is. You have the image of Donald Trump, which is basically prescribed by the media as bad, but somebody like Hakeem Jeffries, who can lie his ass off, is good. And that's what the media is going to be doing throughout the midterms. Everything that Donald Trump proclaims to do. And they're going to tie the Republicans to Donald Trump, even though Donald Trump is not on the ticket. That's how the mainstream media is. Now, if Obama were president, none of this would be said. Now, the development of media politics. The news media wasn't always important. Press conferences, meetings of public officials with reporters. Franklin D. Roosevelt did over 1,000 of them. Now, instead of having investigative journalism, that's the use of in-depth reporting to unearth scandals, scams, schemes, putting reporters and politicians opposite of each other. Nope. Whichever party or politician to whom the media deems they like, they'll lie for that politician. Kamala Harris got on a lot of media shows. When she wasn't on media at first, she was just talking about Donald Trump, Donald Trump, Donald Trump. Didn't do anything for her because in the end, the media lied for her too. Clip stuff to make it look like she didn't say what she said, but didn't remember that we already had the clips before they clipped it. And then the media, depending on what candidate they like, coverage of elections and presidential candidates has been less favorable. The print media. Now, you don't see too much print media. Most of your print media is now on the internet, but you still have some newspapers and magazines. That's yellow journalism. It's a sensational style of reporting characterized newspapers at the turn of the century. Well, the turn of what century? The 18th century, or the 19th century to the 20th, or the 20th century into the 21st century. Could be both, but you don't see a lot of newspapers. They do have some, and then they have pecking orders amongst newspapers. And the top newspaper happens to be the New York Times. It has the largest impact. Now, you have to understand right now that newspaper and news weekly circulation has basically declined since the advent of the internet. The broadcast media. Now, when it comes to talk radio, like your Rush Limbaughs and your Sean Hannity's and your Michael Savages and your Mark Levin, no, that's mainly on the right. But even with the talk radio, which is biased as well, your Mike Gallagher's, your Dennis Prager's, your Hugh Hewitts, more of your media and your propaganda is on the left. And basically, when you have your talk radio, where's most of your talk radio? It's usually on AM radio. Who listens to AM radio? Now, you do have your satellite radio, like Sirius satellite radio, but for the most part, television and radio, that's your broadcast media. And back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, it brought government and politics into people's homes. The Vietnam War. Politicians' appearance and mannerisms are important. I wasn't around then, but in 1960, 1959, you had the Kennedy-Nixon presidential debate. Then you also have the government regulation of the broadcast media. The FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, regulates the use of airwaves in 3 ways. You want to prevent a monopoly control of the market. They also have performance reviews of stations, and they issue fair treatment rules for politicians. Well, that sounds good in theory, but if that were all true, we'd have a lot more media regulations, and more of the media would be down the middle instead of one-sided, particularly coming from the left. Now, from broadcasting to narrowcasting, the rise of cable news channels. The first one that I can remember was CNN. Now, CNN used to be good in the 80s and early 90s. They used to have HN, headline news, that was CNN. And for a while, the left carried everything. Rush Limbaugh came out in 1988. He lasted a long time. He was out before Fox News came out. Well, when you look at what we call narrowcasting, that's basically media programming on cable TV or internet, and it is focused on one topic and aimed at a particular audience. Example, C-SPAN. Then you have a potential of cable to report on news as it happens and offer myriad choices. Yet resources are limited and stories are not substantive stories. Well, it used to be when you heard media, you had your national news, and then you had news on at 6, 10, and 11. Well, now news is all over. And even when it's not on Fox or CNN, you have news on Truth Social, you have news on X, formerly Twitter, and you have people like me who report news. Even though I might not be up 24 hours, people who watch my videos. So they make my newscast 24 hours. So the bottom line is we live more in an information society today. And with all the information flowing, I still ask myself, why do we have so many dummies in America who don't understand what's going on? The impact of the internet, potential to inform Americans about politics. Internet is propulsive. People choose what to learn about. Since Americans are generally disinterested in politics or apolitical, they will not necessarily use the internet for political information. Blogs provide additional information about news stories. Well, blogs can be made up stories too. And most people are not interested in the actual politics or issues. They're interested in the drama. And this is why I'm telling you, when it comes to voting for a candidate in 2026, people are going to vote on the drama. See, Americans love drama. They're emotional people. They're individuals who claim they went to school, but they really don't understand what they're reading and writing about. They don't know how to answer questions. Everything is based on emotion. And again, when you deal with the court of public opinion, whether it is using mainstream media or social media, or you're getting information from your peers, it's all being regurgitated from the mainstream media, and it could be from the professors. But individuals, what they do is you can have communication. I can say 1 + 1. I start off by saying 2. And when it gets down to the 100th person, is 1 + 1 2? No. They're going to change it. Even if they didn't know what 1 + 1 was, I gave you the fact, but that fact is going to be changed to some fiction. And what are we going to go with? We're going to go with why 1 + 1 is not 2. Why? Because the court of opinion that has a lot of ignorant people, they're going to deem that if 1 + 1 is 2, it's going to offend somebody. And see, that's what the court of public opinion is doing. They're using words like offend, misogyny, patriarchy, family, male, heterosexual. That's what they're using. And this is why men have been transformed into basically women in males' bodies. And now you have a number of the women who want to become the men. And the court of public opinion also creates a lot of hypocrisies. Because what happens is people will talk in circles and they don't know they're talking in circles. You will have some individuals who get on the internet, speak clearly, act like they have a PhD, and they're not going to say anything. They're going to do the old James Brown move. They're going to talk loud and they're going to say not a damn thing. However, when you have a dumb audience, they're going to believe it because it sounds good. And generally, what the mainstream media does is if the society is going good, but the other side who doesn't have any policies at all, they'll tell you that society is not going good, and they'll go to the media and tell you society is not good, even though it's good. And then they're going to get the people to believe them. Why? Because people are gullible. They believe anything. If I tell them there's a big bag of shit out there, if you open it up, there's $1 million there, somebody's going to go get it. Why? Because I told them to do it. And the court of public opinion told them to do it. And they're looking to get rich. See, desperate people will fall for anything because they're not keen enough to think on their own. And the Democrats know that. They know that people are dumb as shit out here. That's why you use the weak. You can convince the weak to do anything you want. That's why, for the most part, the strong only survive because the weak are useless. And the people who get used the most are women, whether they're black, white, because all you have to do is mention something about patriarchy to a woman, and she goes cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Because that's how stupid a number of them are, instead of thinking. Or when you talk about men or women, like if a woman says, all men are dogs. Well, the minute I speak up and say, I'm not a dog, well, I'm a dog. Why? Because I spoke up. See, if it's not affecting you, you don't say anything. And then the people who are really being affected, they're going to get upset the most. They're going to get offended the most, and they're going to use shaming language. Why? Because they know that they're the guilty persons. And see, the media promotes everybody feel good. If you come in last place, you get the same trophy as a first place team. The media doesn't give any incentives to do better. In fact, if you're successful, you hear this in the media. It used to be, we want to tax all the millionaires. Now you got a number of millionaires. Now it's the billionaires. Where do they get that from? The media, the court of public opinion. And the court of public opinion thinks that success is bad. Why? Because they're not successful. They believe in all these blogs. And this is why you have to be careful with what you look for on all of these internet sites. Understand that there are a lot of people lying, and the ones who make comments. When they're in the comments section, oh, well, Trump is an orange man. He's never gotten convicted. But they still believe he's an orange man. Bottom line is, the media is always going to make people look stupid. Why? Because stupid loves stupid. The media is stupid. Private control of the media. Only a small number of TV stations are publicly owned in America. I mean, like your NPR, your PBS, they just got cut. Independent in what they can report, media are totally dependent on advertising revenues. Well, NPR and PBS donations and taxpayers, chains, massive media conglomerates that account for over 4/5 of the nation's daily newspaper circulation, also control broadcast media. Comcast. When I pay my Comcast bill, I'm paying for everybody who works at Comcast. And who's Comcast support? The Democrats. Why? Well, NBC. Now, MSNBC, which is now MS Now, is its own conglomerate. And we're going to see how long MS Now stays afloat. But again, 4/5 of the media. That means it's corporate media. Who owns 4/5? Fox, Disney, News Corp. Well, News Corp, I believe, is Fox. The media is all corporate. A lot of advertising goes into the media. And see, that's where Donald Trump can help some of his constituents when they're running for office. See, Donald Trump didn't have to pay for media. He used his own money. Some politicians had to get a lot of donors. Donald Trump still got a number of donors. And believe it or not, we talk about the midterms. There are going to be a number of people who are going to vote, but the question is, who's going to get out the most? The hate Trumpers or the like Trumpers? That's where the question is going to be. Policy versus hating Trump. That's what it's going to come down to. Finding the news, beats, special locations from which news frequently emanates, such as Congress or the White House, trial balloons, an intentional news leak for the purpose of assessing the political reaction. Reporters and their success depend on each other, one for stories and the other to get them out. Again, now this was in 2004, and this, you don't see this search engine around. It used to be called Lycos. Well, again, this is what you had that ranked the top media. Now we're going all the way back to Clay Aiken. You're going back to 2004, Halloween, baseball, Michelle Viet. This is all back in 2004. And who was president in 2004? You got it, George Bush. He ran against John Kerry formerly, and John Kerry ended up in the Obama administration becoming his Secretary of State. But John Kerry was also the senator of Massachusetts, along with Ted Kennedy or Edward Kennedy. Presenting the news. Superficial describes most news coverage today. Sound bites, short video clips of approximately 10 seconds. Major TV networks devote less time to covering political candidates. Bullshit on that one. They cover the Democratic candidates. Now, as far, well, we call them clips now. We don't call them sound bites. But you get a sound bite based on what the media wants you to hear, and that's where it stops. But that's to get the public to hone in on that one sound bite to make their judgment. And most news coverage today is superficial. They talk about a lot of nothing when there's a lot of something happening. Big one, reporting the news. Now, you know there's bias in the news. Many people believe that the news is biased in favor of one point of view. True. Generally, we're not very biased toward a particular ideology. Well, they like the Democrats' ideology. News reporting is biased toward what will draw the largest audience, good pictures and negative reporting. Mainstream media. If you look at my background, that's what you see. And the only one that you see that is different, you see Fox News. But other than that, you see the Washington Post, the New York Times, NBC, CNN, ABC. Now you do see Fox as well. But bottom line, most of your mainstream media and your 24-hour outlets, except for maybe Newsmax. Newsmax is even better than Fox. News Nation, they tend to be they're a little slanted right. Right side broadcasting, they're right, but you don't have the big conglomerates on the right that you do left. This is why the left has power in the media. Stories, reporting the news. It's what it looks like. The news and public opinion. Television news can affect what people think is important. Notice what was said, what people think is important. So you have your agenda setting effect. So basically, the media influence the criteria by which the public evaluates political leaders. Some stories or events can be made more important, others less important, depending on their coverage. Or you have some stories that you might not hear at all. Again, the media wants to influence how you think. And for the most part, most of the mainstream media is always going to keep you on a plantation. They don't keep you on a plantation because you're ignorant. See, media is not about making you feel good. You may believe in your mind that it's making you feel good, but it's giving you this delusion that you've made it when you haven't made it. And the bottom line is, if you are looking for something to make you feel good, you're definitely in delusion land. You're always going to be disappointed because you're living a lie. Again, that's why I came up with lead. Lies, emotion, assumption, delusion. Also, I could make leap, persuasion. The bottom line is with a lot of the media, you look at people like Mamdani. You think he's going to give everybody something free in New York when he takes place January 2nd as mayor? No, he's not. But see, he knew how to get the people out, tell them what they want to hear. Mamdani, believe it or not, if you think about it, Mamdani and Trump, they talk on opposite sides of the same coin, but they're actually the same person. They're populist people. So they know how to take issues that are trending and put it in their political campaign, even though they might not utilize, although Trump is doing mostly what he's saying through executive order, because both parties don't have his back. So that's what's making him look like a king, because Congress doesn't have his back. That's why Congress believes what they think. Congress is about Washington. That's all Congress is. They've always been about Washington. Because Congress, the Supreme Court, you also have your non-elected bureaucrats. For the most part, they're almost lifetime. Because if you think about the House, you get elected every 2 years. But you had people like Nancy Pelosi, Maxine Waters. They've had 20 terms in the House. That means 22-year terms. That's 40 years. So they've been basically lifetime politicians. So they talk about affordable. And the Democrats are good for talking about affordable. They don't care about what's affordable because they know they can afford it. But they're talking about affordable because they want to make it about Trump not doing anything about the economy. Well, the president is a figurehead. Your House has the purse strings. They decide where the monies are going to go. But see, Washington was getting all the gravy. Trump came in, he cut off the gravy. And then you also have to watch out when it comes to foreign news, like Israel. You have a number of Americans that are too caught up with Israel. My opinion is, let's stay with what's local. Clean up your own backyard before you worry about somebody else. And this is what makes America look like they're the police of the world. America goes to the rescue. In other countries, they don't care about America unless it's getting Americans money. The media's agenda setting function. Policy agenda. Issues that attract the serious attention of public officials and other people actively involved in politics at the time. Policy entrepreneurs, people who invest their political capital in an issue to get it placed high on a governmental agenda. They use media to raise awareness of issues. This is why I say black people, they don't understand this. That last sentence, you have to have an agenda, you have to finance it, advertise it, and then you got to organize it. This is why the alphabet community under Obama got what they wanted, because they knew where to get the money from. Money is capital. But the media wouldn't tell you that. No, the media attracts people from the left. And if you look at the media also decides what's popular when it comes to what you wear out here. Look at a lot of your feminist women out here getting hair chopped off, blue hair. It's the media. They're putting that out there. Nose, earrings in your nose, everything. It's the media. The media has an influence in this culture. Particularly, you look at a lot of the tattoos, particularly a lot of your women with the blue hair, the bull nose. They have that because they're rebellious. They make themselves look ugly so men wouldn't hit on them. That's what they're doing. Bottom line. But the media drives all this. And when you have ignorant people who believe that, that's what the media wants. And that comes from the Democratic Party. Democratic Party praises education, but wants stupid people at the same time. That's so the stupid people can continue to depend on government. Understanding the mass media, the media and scope of government. Media as a watchdog restricts politicians. New proposals are met with skepticism, which restricts scope of government, what it can do. If media identify a problem, force government to address it, which expands the scope of government. Well, that used to happen. Right now, the media doesn't. When I watch these press conferences, a lot of your media cohorts, they're always asking stupid questions. They're asking stupid questions because stupid people. They don't really, you think about what's going on, they really don't care about policy. I care about policy. But the media does not care about policy. They really care about destroying the world, turning it upside down, creating anarchy, creating lies, taking deviant behavior to make it normal. Or media doesn't call out the bullshit on the left, they'll call it out on the right, but the media makes excuses for the bad behavior on the left. And the thing about it is, you can't make an excuse for bad behavior through other types of bad behavior. The media doesn't hold accountability. They'll tell you, they'll hold it on one side, but on the other, they'll let it go scot-free because that's what the media is about. The media is for all this chaos. And you have a number of individuals who are coming out of college thinking that they can save the world. You can't save yourself, let alone save the world. But again, the media, and when I say media, your Facebooks, your Instagrams, all that media out there, your OnlyFans, your TikToks. If you think about it, that's where all of the dysfunction is. And it's not just for blacks. Many people put their dysfunctions out there. Now, there is some media that reports on the weather. But see, people really aren't interested. When I tell you about politics, they're really not interested in the political issues. They act as if they are. They're interested in the drama. Because most people don't even understand politics. You ask a number of people, well, who's your governor? Who's your lieutenant governor? Who's your mayor? They don't know. What issues are on the ballot? They don't know. That's why they listen to the media. The media can lie to them. See, the media will tell you, oh, you don't have to look it up. We'll get the answer for you. When the media damn well can't get the answer for you. That's the issue with the media. Media is going to create chaos because, again, the media wants to keep you stupid. Individualism in the media. Candidates run their own by appealing to people on television. That's true. Easier to focus on one person like the president than groups, Congress, or the courts. Democracy in the media. Information is the fuel of democracy. Well, we don't have a democracy. We have a republic. See, that's another thing. A lot of misinformation. The media puts it out there. But news provides more entertainment than information. It is superficial. True, because you don't really get news. You're getting opinion. That's all it is. You have to understand. People don't really care about the news. News is a business, giving people what they want. Well, many people don't even understand what's in the news because they don't watch the news. They regurgitate points to try to make arguments. Even reading, that's a form of media. Because a number of people who write books, I guarantee, get some of their citations from the media. They don't tell you that, but they do. Media is very powerful. Media can change minds. That's why they have freedom of the press. Now, in summary, Media can shape public opinion on political issues and influence policy agenda. Broadcast media have replaced print media over time. Narrowcasting and the internet have further shifted media. And when it all comes to brass tacks or down to brass tacks, media makes a lot of money. Basically, media, they're biased. They don't care about the political issues at all. They talk about them. They don't talk about the political issues or the policy issues in the form of they know what the issue is. They talk about it so they can blame it on the person that they don't like. They make a mountain out of a mole. The media creates a lot of drama. In other words, they exaggerate. But people, because they're high on their emotions, low on informity, they believe what the media tells them. And the media knows it. And in the end, media is going to keep you on the plantation. So basically, when I go and talk about the media, talk about the court of public opinion. Again, public opinion, shaped heavily by the mainstream and social media, allows society to judge individuals, especially in politics. Before formal trials, it influences public support for cases, it pressures officials, and can cause lasting reputational damage regardless of legal outcomes. But you have your key aspects to the court of public opinion. Now, the definition: the court of public opinion refers to the collective perception, sentiment, and judgment of the general public, regardless of an individual or event, often operating outside formal legal procedures. And there's an impact of media. Mainstream media, particularly TV and newspapers, and social media, Twitter and TikTok, and newscasting, that's all your internet, they accelerate the process by allowing narratives to spread rapidly before evidence is fully investigated. And there are consequences. Individuals may face trial by media, where they're deemed guilty in the public eye. This can result in shame, career damage, and pressure on regulators or prosecutors. Then there's political framing. In political context, the media often frames stories by using partisan language, which influences how the public perceives events. And then there's interactions with legal systems. Well, juries are sometimes cloistered to avoid this influence. However, the court of public opinion can sometimes affect case outcomes by creating immense pressure, leading to settlements. And then there's the role of mainstream media in politics. Well, we get down to agenda setting. Media outlets shape public opinion by deciding which stories to cover and how to frame them. That's true. A lot of your stories are polarized. And in polarized societies, systems, basically people or citizens often show stronger loyalty to political leaders than to institutions like the court, making public opinions highly partisan. And then there's increased political focus. And this is where research indicates that media coverage of the U.S. Supreme Court has increasingly become focused on politics rather than law, particularly since 2016. This is why you have a lot of your activist judges. They're legislating from the bench. In other words, they're making their own laws up instead of utilizing the laws from the Constitution or the laws of the land. And this is what creates public disinformation and public misinformation. So while the mainstream media aims to inform, which is not true, it is often criticized for bias and failing to fact check. No, they'll fact check the left, but when they're fact check themselves, they either scrub it or deny it. And this allows mainstream media to fuel the public's judgment. Well, again, you got a dumb public because people who are uninformed are going to believe anything. And that is the problem when it comes to voting. We're going to have a lot of individuals vote and they don't even know what they're voting for. But when they're told to hate Trump, rather than to vote for policies, because they don't do any type of reading or research, they're actually going to believe and hate Trump. And that's the only reason why Joe Biden won in 2020. It wasn't about the policies. they hated Trump. They didn't understand what Trump was doing, but yet they were all buddy buddies with Trump when he was on the Democratic side. So basically, again, as I'm giving you an overview, we have public opinion versus judicial independence. So while the Supreme Court is designed to be insulated from the public opinion to protect minority rights and maintain the independent judiciary, perception of its legitimacy can still be influenced by how cases are framed in the news. Public opinion generally holds less sway over the court itself, but can influence the political climate surrounding appointments and decisions. And something else that you need to understand too, the No Kings protests. Well, the media built that up like Trump is king, and they had two No Kings protests. You heard the word fascism, fascism, Nazism, Nazism, Nazism. Well, how can Trump be a fascist when your real fascists and your anarchists on the left? But what they did, they got the media to convince people that Trump is the fascist. Trump is the problem. When the real problem is the ones on the left. You look at all the violence. The Democrats cannot win by election. So what do? They get violent to try to bully and scare people, like they gunned down Charlie Kirk. Well, they also use cancelization. So they'll cancel anything that they don't believe in, and that's what the left does. Now, the right, for the most part, they're basically eunuchs. They have no balls. They allow themselves to be taken or made a fool of because they're afraid of being called sexist, homophobes, misogynists. Bottom line is, you got to call it the way it is. These individuals on the left, they're not that powerful. You look at what's going on now with the fraud by the Somalis. Now, I'm not saying all the Somalis are bad. I'm not, because I don't believe all of them had anything to do with the fraud, but the powers that be up in Minnesota did. And I want to see what Pam Bondi and Kash Patel are going to do, because I've seen them too. They've been talking a lot of stuff. I'm not saying they haven't been working hard, but the bottom line, we want to see some people go to jail, because I guarantee if the roles were reversed, you would see a lot of Republicans going to jail. Let me tell you how bad the mainstream media is, particularly when you get women out. And women are the last ones that you need to hear from with the microphone. There are only a very few, but most of them, and it's not just black women, it's white women as well, the liberal ones. They're out here saying, and the dumb men out here, particularly the dumb black men. You got the Proud Boys out here protesting. When did I see the Proud Boys out here protesting? I haven't seen one Proud Boy out there protesting. It's because the left is so used to protesting that they've actually listened to the mainstream media, and it's the left who's violent, and they're thinking that the left has a peaceful protest, but they're making it out that the right is doing all the killing, all the violence, when the individuals on the left are generally your white males. And this is what the media is doing as well. Although black on black crime is high, do I believe all statistics? A lot of these numbers, part of the mainstream media that they're utilizing to false polls. You get all these pollsters, and what they're doing is they'll take data and they won't poll for a while. So you'll go back in about 3 months. What does the mainstream media do? Because you got a lot of people who aren't watching, they'll use the old data to make it look like what's happening is happening. And then they'll use a small sample, and they'll oversample somebody. Like there's this guy on CNN that he puts numbers up there. Well, where's he getting his information from? I believe a lot of them are making these numbers up to deceive the public. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to utilize the polls to give you delusional polls to keep people from voting. In other words, they're trying to use the court of public opinion to tell you, who already won, so you don't have to get out the vote. That's what the media is doing. And it's very clever because, again, when you have a number of ignorant people, individuals will follow the mainstream media. The media, believe it or not a lot of educated people, and they're paid liars. You're protesters. All of these activists, it's all organized. All of the signs are made. It's all organized. Because basically you have a number of individuals, and what are these old people out here? They should be sitting home collecting their retirement, and they're talking about the economy. Well, hell, you're getting Social Security. You're getting what you work for. Maybe you didn't put enough into the system because you didn't work enough hours. But they're out here talking about the president. Bottom line is you might be checking out pretty soon. But you worry about Trump. You got yours. And then here's what the mainstream media is doing too. They think all of the Gen Zers are going to vote for the Democrat. I don't believe so. And you think because Charlie Kirk is gone that there are numerous Charlie Kirks out there. Media's not going to report on it. I mean, Turning Point is a huge organization. And there's probably other groups out there besides Turning Point. See, the media won't report on that. Why? Because, see, organizations have influence as well. And I believe the Gen Zers, they're going to be a whole different generation than the millennials were. The millennials were just lost. Now, do I fault all of the millennials? No, because we had a lot of dumb Gen Xers out here, particularly that were born between my part, 1965 and 1970. It's because they followed some of the routines by the baby boomers. They were gullible as well. But see, the Gen Xers, the problem that we had is we were lied to by the silent generation and maybe some of the older baby boomers. But in retrospect, the older baby boomers took everything. And when you're telling me to pick myself up from the bootstraps, yeah, that's good. However, the older baby boomers and, of course, the silent generation, they had it when America was prospering. Wages weren't as stagnated. We didn't live in a service economy. So the cost of tuition was very low. And see, that's what they're not telling you too. Here's what the media is telling you too. Well, a lot of your degrees out there, like nursing and architecture and accounting, aren't professional degrees. Bullshit. They are. The amount of money that you can borrow is capped off. Now, people with common sense like me, I'm going to break it down to you right now. And an MS in engineering. It's all capped off. Why? Because for the most part, when you have a nursing degree, an architecture degree, an accounting degree, when you have any degrees that require a license, the amount of spending is going to be capped off because, number one, you can get a license and that license can absolve you from going to graduate school. In other words, if you go get a 4-year degree in nursing, a 4-year degree in architecture, a 4-year degree or a 5-year degree in architecture, a bachelor of architecture, which is generally 5 years, and you get a license, guess what? You're going to get a return on investment over time. So many individuals in those professional settings, because those are still professional degrees. You're just not getting the MD by your name, the JD, the ED. No, you can get a license. An architect can get a CPA. You don't have to get a graduate degree. In fact, this is what they're not telling you. Most of the individuals are not getting graduate degrees if you get a license. So being a physician's assistant, that's a professional because you have to get some type of license. And you get a much greater return on investment if you go get a license than continuing to go to school to end up in a bunch of debt that you cannot pay back. That was the whole significance of it. And the more financial aid that the colleges get, the cost of tuition rises. And really, and I'm going to repeat this, and the mainstream media is not telling you this, when it comes to college, you can really cut down on a lot of debt by, I don't know, some people want the college experience. Fine. You don't have to go to a Harvard. You don't have to go to a Cal. You don't have to go to those high priced schools. You can go to most colleges and get the same college experience. You can still be in state, but be 2 or 3 hours away from home and stay in a dorm. You can still get a degree from a decent state school. You can go to a community college. If you want to stay home, get a 2-year degree, then you can go transfer that to a 4-year college. I always tell engineering majors to do that, but the mainstream media, if you listen to them, they wouldn't tell you that. Why? Because they don't believe in it. They believe in keeping you with the ideology that the degrees that the Department of Education deemed that weren't professional, and so they put that in a number of people's head, and then you get a lot of the dummies that run with it. No, not that they're not professional degrees, it's just that they capped off the amount that you can borrow. Because what do you do when somebody's loaning you something? Loan is not financial aid. Loan is something you have to pay back with interest. So to protect people from getting themselves in debt where they're not going to get a return on investment when they graduate, they took these degrees, which they should not have said these degrees aren't professional. They said, we're going to take these degrees and we're going to put a cap on how much you can borrow, but they are, I would go back and say, these are still professional degrees because you need the license. If they would go back and do that, then individuals would have a different perspective on those degrees being professional, because you got the dumb female, particularly the black females out there saying, well, they're doing this because they're all female oriented. No, they're not. They said, well, for male nurses, that wouldn't have been happening like that. It would still be happening like that because they said nursing. It's just that more females are in nursing, but you have a number of guys who are in nursing as well, more today than ever. The bottom line is most nursing majors, most engineer majors, most accounting majors don't go to school to get a PhD. I don't see too many PhDs in accounting. I don't see too many PhDs in architecture and engineering. Most of your PhDs are in your academic based subjects like your history, your English, and those areas that you want to become a teacher, you want to work in the education sector as an administrator or a superintendent, where you go get a master's in public administration or master's in education or or a doctorate in public administration. That's where a lot of your degrees are, but people aren't going to tell you that. And most of those degrees, public administration, history, they're easy degrees because they're no good in the market. What you're going to do with a general studies degree. Now, if you have a general studies degree and you have a path to something, like say I get a general studies degree with a focus on construction management. Well, then that degree, although it says general studies, it's no longer a general studies degree because you added the concentration. You blended in construction courses with that general studies degree. So therefore, you have a general studies degree with a concentration on construction management, which in essence, it's barely construction management. So whenever you hear media talk about the education, like there's certain degrees that the Trump administration deems unprofessional degrees, tell them that's a lie. They just cap the amount that they're going to get for those degrees so they won't run into debt, but they're still professional degrees. But in those fields, you don't have a large number of master's degrees or doctorate degrees in those fields of accounting or architecture or nursing because they get a professional license. That takes care of everything. And then once you get that professional license and some experience, you get a full return on your investment. But that's what the mainstream media does. The mainstream media brings to light what they want you to see. But what's really happening, they keep you in the dark. And why does the media do that? Because in retrospect, if you don't do the searching for yourself, the media's job is to tell you what they want you to know. Because in essence, when it comes to the media is not your friend. The court of public opinion is not your friend. They're just ignorant people who live in the echo chamber. They don't do any thinking. They believe in the lead or the leap, the lies, the emotion, the assumption, the perception, or the lies, the emotion, the assumption, and the delusion. That's delusion and deceit. And see, the media wants you to be a sheep. The bottom line is don't be a sheep. Because the moment you become a sheep, you're going to be on somebody's plate. In other words, you're going to lose your life. You only get one life. So I'm just going to say this. Use media like ground.gov or groundnews.com, that kind of media. Understand what media you're looking at. Fact check all of it, whether it's left or right. Because media is a very powerful tool, and even social media. And it's very bad when you have a lot of individual people who are ignorant. And they want to keep you ignorant. The media is like crabs in a barrel. Example, look at Nicki Minaj. Or if you look at black people, you turn and go the other way when you're black, the media is going to castrate you. Because the media does nothing but allow followers. Because followers believe in a lie. And in the end, the media doesn't educate you. The media doesn't keep you in truth. Although the media has power, media never seeks truth. Why? Because in essence, the media always wants to keep you in the dark. Because the media believes that they know better than you. And if you're in the dark, become a sheep. And when you become a sheep, you get slaughtered. And that's my commentary for this edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show right here on YouTube. If you like what I just presented, comment, share, and subscribe. And if you're looking for some STEM content, please check out the second channel, the QCIS channel. We're on that channel. Get a daily dose of science, technology, engineering, and math. Yes, a daily dose. Science, technology, engineering, and math. Now, here's where you can find me. For the 411 Talk Zone radio show, which this is my main channel, you can find me right here on YouTube, X formerly Twitter, True Social, and of course, Rumble. And for the QCIS channel, you can find me right here on YouTube, X formerly Twitter, and of course, LinkedIn. And for individuals, if you're not offended, don't worry about what was said in this video. But if you are offended and some nerves got touched, you need to make some corrections in yourself because the truth is always going to set you free. And if you're jealous and you're worried about what somebody else has, you need to relax. It's only material. And this is what you need to hear. Was be blessed for what you have. Don't worry about what you don't have. Know that the sun rises in the east, sets in the west. Doesn't apply, let it fly. But if the shoe fits, wear it. And if you don't like the shoe, then change it. And once again, thank you for listening to this edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show right here on YouTube. Till next time, my name is Leon Jones. Wish you all to have a wonderful and gracious evening. God bless you. I'm out.